Good morning. This is Perspectives. I'm Celeste Baragni. Today, my guest is Gail Wilkerson. She is the director of the Lead Program for the city of Biddeford. Good morning, Gail.
Good morning, Celeste. Thanks so much for having me on the program.
I grew up in Saco, so Biddeford is right next door. And even though you are the director of the Lead Program for the city of Biddeford, I think it's an important message for everyone who is in a neighborhood with older homes or has an older home. So tell us about lead poisoning. What are the effects of it and how does it happen?
As you mentioned, Maine is replete with older homes in the Biddeford area, in particular, the downtown area. More than 85% of the rental units, which house the majority of the population downtown, are older than 1978. And why 1978 is an important year is that that's the threshold for when paint companies stopped using lead in their paint. So anything prior to 1978 would be housing stock that this program would be interested in. The reason that we are interested in those properties is because lead is a toxin, and for the very reasons that it was popular back in the day, longevity being one of those things, is some of the reasons why today we're having problems. Because lead is a toxin and it's most toxic in our world to children under the age of 6. Because lead on, for instance, painted windows, doors where there's a lot of friction, opening and closing, that dust can settle on the windowsill, it can settle on the floor, and that's typically where young kiddos play. So the dust itself can get on toys, it can go from, hand to mouth, and that typically is how children are poisoned by the lead in the paint. The effect of that is that for little kiddos, it can affect their brain development, which would include things like their behavioral development, language and speech. Also, it could affect someone's IQ over their whole lifetime. So those are some of the reasons why we want to get in and proactively take care of lead-based paint that may be in a deteriorating condition in some of these older homes.
And I was reading that the state of Maine requires blood lead tests for all kids at 1 and 2 years of age because it's the only way to know if your child has lead poisoning, and that is to get your child tested. How do families go about doing that?
Yes, Maine is really at the forefront. In fact, Maine has introduced some very stringent standards for both testing and the amount of lead that can be found in a child's blood system for it to be considered a lead poisoning issue. So that should be very comforting to Maine folks that the CDC is very much interested in nipping this issue in the bud. For a kiddo, the pediatric offices, anyone who's seeing a young child, whether it's family medicine or a pediatrician, the protocol is at 1 year of age and at 2 years of age, they must be tested, and it's a blood test. So it's a blood draw. Any lead is, not good. But what is considered to be, quote, lead poisoning is anything at 5 milligrams per deciliter in children. And if that is found at the 1 year and 2 year checkup, that information is provided to the CDC, and they begin an investigation of where could this child have encountered this lead. And typically, because kids spend so much time in their homes, the home is where the exposure happened.
And that's a good point. And as a mom who had kids in daycare, that's another place to look. And also Meme and Pepe's house, or the grandparents' houses, things like that, where they spend a lot of time. And how would you check for paint in your home?
So if I'm a consumer or, parent and I'm interested or suspect there may be lead paint and it may be a hazard, you can contact the Maine CDC, and they have a website as well that is dedicated to prevention of lead poisoning in children. You can order a kit for your home and test it that way. The other way you can do it is to talk to your landlord if you suspect and ask your landlord to call our program and to explore in that way. We do lead inspection, and it's okay to have lead paint as long as it's not in a condition where it creates dust or chipping paint, where kids can eat the chips or inhale or ingest the dust. So we can come out and test for that and then work with the landlord. That's what our program is all about, working with the property owners to take care of these issues in a preventative way.
Keeping things clean, too, in that environment is super important, right?
Absolutely. And if you suspect it's lead paint, what the best practice is never to dry dust that area in terms of cleaning it or even dry vacuum it. What we recommend is wet cleaning first. Really damping down any dust and wiping it away is the safest way so that there aren't particles that are put into the air from the very act of cleaning. Anytime you suspect there may be dust and you want to take care of it. When you're in a place where you suspect there may be lead paint that is in the form of dust because of all of that friction, doors again, windows, floors, as you mentioned, baseboards, we sometimes see it there, walls, could be anywhere.
Okay, Gail, well, let's talk about the lead program for the city of Biddeford now that we've kind of gone through what effects lead does have and where it comes from. What are your goals for the lead program in the city of Biddeford?
Sure. So we were lucky enough to secure a 3-year grant from the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and we are completing year 2. So we have 1 year left of our first 3-year grant period. We do anticipate both applying for and hopefully receiving an additional tranche of money for another 3 years. But what we had hoped in the first year was to be able to participate in and have landlords work with us on abating, meaning making the lead paint in a housing unit safe for children and families, up to 135 units in the city. And there are about 5,000 rental units in the city, so it's a very small portion, and we wanted to, certainly start with a realistic number. Last year with COVID, we did see a lot of, for very good reasons, landlords wanting to kind of not explore renovations, not really knowing where their next rental money was coming from necessarily, it just being a very unpredictable, I think, year for folks. So we had less participation last year than we really expected. So we anticipate being able, after this 3-year period, to have worked in 100 units in the city. And at this point, we have already cleared or made lead safe 25 units. And we have a list of another 70 units in line. So we're in a good place, but we are always interested in receiving calls, emails from landlords in the Biddeford downtown area regarding what their issues are and then getting them on our wait list to be inspected for lead, and then if lead hazards exist, going in and actually doing abatement.
And where this is a federal program, the building's tenants do need to income qualify, and the program benefits properties that offer affordable rents to families of modest means. And so for the landlord, how would they get in touch with you and take advantage of this program so that they can update their safety regarding lead in their buildings?
Thank you for mentioning the household income requirements. Because there are so many multifamily units in the downtown, that is our focus, and the government's focus is making units lead safe and affordable for families. If the building qualifies, that's one piece, pre-1978 multifamily, and has lead-based paint that is in a deteriorating condition. That's one piece. The other part, as you mentioned, is that at least half of the families served by the property need to serve low-income people. If folks in Biddeford are renting to Section 8 or Section 8 eligible households, those folks are automatically going to qualify for the program.
I know a little bit about lead paint. I know that in some situations, if it isn't too damaged, you can just paint over it. But in the situations where it is flaking and it is a risk, that can be a bigger project. What do families do while that work is being done in their apartment?
Sure. So HUD knows that is going to be reality for some of these families. We don't want anyone staying in their units while actual lead work is happening in the units, because dust can also be created in that way. So what we have through the government is a pot of money that will relocate at the grant's expense, not at the family's expense, relocate the family for up to 10 days, but typically it's, between 5 and 7 days. And what we do is we have a partner with Community Concepts. They will actually talk directly to the families. They understand their needs and will learn more about the family's needs. For instance, I may be in a family and I need to stay in Biddeford during this relocation period because I have children in school. So we will try to find them an accommodation that is as close as possible to where they need to be. In other cases, there may not be children and someone works in Portland. It's most convenient for that family, set them up in a situation, hotel, motel in the Portland area. If there's any inconvenience, we want to look at that and be able to address that as much as possible because we know it is not convenient in any way to disrupt your day-to-day life and your day-to-day household activities.
And Gail, I also see that besides removing lead paint hazards, the program also helps with fire safety improvements. Tell us about that.
Sure. So as we were writing this grant, there was this opportunity for us to also apply for what HUD calls Healthy Homes money. And that, in essence, is money to address any number of health, safety, and in our case, code issues. A lot of the multifamily properties in the Biddeford area have needs. I mean, just ongoing needs, especially for older buildings. There's ongoing maintenance that has to occur. And in some cases, that can lead to a code notice of violation or deficiency, if you will. Not necessarily the landlord's poor planning. It just happens to be perhaps that code has changed. And now all of a sudden they need to update. At any rate, as we do the lead inspection in the house, we also do this 29-point Healthy Homes inspection, and that covers everything from, as you said, fire safety, also fall risk, things like mold, things such as safety. You know, is someone able to enter your unit from another hallway from the outside? Those sorts of things. And in the city of Biddeford, we really want to put a high priority on any of those fire safety issues, make sure those are taken care of. The last thing any community wants is to have a devastating impact from a fire in a multi-family property. So we have spent on the projects to date a lot of dollars on fire-rated doors, fire-rated windows, which are extremely more expensive than your typical door, but provide that additional safety that is needed in a property, as well as carbon monoxide and smoke detection units. And in Biddeford, the 3 or more units, those need to be interconnected, and a lot of buildings aren't presently meeting that code requirement. And then the next highest priority that we're finding is fall risks from maybe a second floor railing, or the railing isn't high enough, those sorts of things. So we're really looking at fire prevention and fall risk prevention first. It could be any of those 29 health safety hazards that is found during the lead inspection that can be addressed.
So if I'm understanding right, when you go through and you do the inspection and you find these issues, the program covers remediating or correcting them? It's not on the landlord?
Yes, we have actually both the HUD money for the lead and the Healthy Homes portions of this work. But we also have matching grant dollars from the main housing grant program called Community Solutions Grant. So we want to be as flexible as possible and be able to use those monies in the way that they're intended to be used as much as possible to reduce the burden on the property owner and really to encourage them to do this work before they may find, for instance, that they receive a letter from the Maine CDC saying a child is lead poisoned and they live at your home and we have to come out and inspect it. We're not able to provide as much financial assistance in that particular scenario to someone, provide 75% of the lead abatement that needs to occur in a place where a child has been found to be lead poisoned. But that's different from if you're approaching this from a preventative standpoint, we can provide up to 90% of the funds that it would take to both abate the property and then open up that door to those healthy home funds and the matching dollars from Maine Housing.
Okay, landlords, I want you to have heard all of that. That was such great information. So please go register for this program and tell us once again, Gail, how they would do that.
Sure. So you can call me directly at the City of Biddeford, 207-284-9105. And again, my name is Gail Wilkerson. And the other thing that folks can do is learn a lot about this program and all of the ins and outs. We know know it's rather complex. We are dealing with the federal government. So call me, or in advance, you can definitely check out the BiddefordMaine.org website. And if you look at our webpage called the Lead Program from the BiddefordMaine.org website, you will find all of this information and more. And again, you can give me a call if I can be helpful in any way in discussing the options that we might be able to take to help make your units in the downtown area lead safe and affordable for children and families.
Thank you so much, Gail, not only for the work that you're doing for the Lead Program in the city of Biddeford, but for talking to the rest of our listeners today and hopefully inspiring them to check their older homes for lead paint and maybe changing the trajectory of a child's life. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Celeste, for having me. Appreciate it very much.
We've been speaking with Gail Wilkerson, the director of the Lead Program for the city of Biddeford. I'm Celeste Baragni. This has been Perspectives.